so that we can share this with participants afterwards. So my name is Mara. I am the workshops coordinator for GreenThumb. We are the part of the New York City Parks Department that works with community gardens across the city. And we are really thrilled to be having this full day of Earth Day gardening webinars for everyone. And I see in the chat that we have a lot of GreenThumb gardeners and folks from all over joining us today. And we really appreciate everyone who's here. A lot of our friends and partners are joining us virtually, and we see you and we're grateful for you. So for the duration of the webinar, we're going to ask that everyone stay muted and use the chat to ask any questions. And what I will do is I will hold on to those questions and ask our facilitators out loud when they're ready for the Q&A. And yeah, we really appreciate all the work everyone is doing these very uncertain and tumultuous times. Y'all are out there gardening. We really appreciate you. You're growing food. You're taking care of your communities. Thank you. And happy birthday. So I'm very excited that we are here with Jade Johnson and Navida from New York Botanical Garden, who are going to teach us all about growing or making seed balls with native plant seeds and biodiversity. So I am going to pass the mic and the camera over to Jade. Hi, Jade. You've got the camera and you've got the mic.
Okay. I'm gonna wait for Navida to do her screen share.
Yeah, the screen share feature is not on right now.
Oh, yep. I will fix that.
Okay.
All right. How now?
Yes. Is it visible properly?
Yeah, we see it. Beautiful.
Great. So just to introduce ourselves, who we are, my name is Jade, and I'm an educator at the New York Botanical Garden, where I work with ages from preschool through high school, engaging students in plant science investigations.
Hi, I'm Navida, and I worked at the New York Botanical Garden with Jade, and I will be working for the Queen's Botanical Garden, and I have a degree in ecology, and I'm working on my current one in urban sustainability.
So now that we've introduced ourselves, we want to learn a little bit about all of you. So if you could just add to the chat what you are most excited to learn about by participating in this workshop, and also the ideas that you may have already about seed balls, or if you've never heard of this term before, what does it remind you of?
I saw earlier in the chat that someone was really excited to make seed balls because they have never done that before. So I'm really glad that you're here. And some ideas people are saying is they're excited to spread native wildflower seeds for pollinators. Questions about how it affects the environment and earth positively, and which seeds are the best for them.
So it seems like a lot of people are very interested in the seeds that we would be using to make these seed balls. What we're going to be doing today is first a demonstration. I'm going to dissect a seed ball that I made a few days ago and just show you what it looks like on the outside and the inside. Navida's going to talk about those components that you do find in the seed ball and why it is beneficial to use them to protect biodiversity. Then I'm doing another demonstration, actually making a seed ball and Navida as well with some alternative materials, and then we'll open it up for question. And it would be helpful if you have something to write with or write on, and then you can write down any ideas or observations you have throughout these demonstrations.
So Jade, I think maybe your video keeps freezing.
Okay, I'm wondering if my video is clear now.
Yes.
All right. I'm actually going to ask you to turn off your screen share, and then I'm going to do a demonstration of seed ball that I already made. Okay. So now if you can see here, this is a seed ball that I made a few days ago. It's not quite dry because of the clay that I had available to use, but if you were to use air dry clay, after a day or so, it would become very hard. So just take a look, what observations you have about what you're seeing, what do you notice, what do you wonder, what does it remind you of, as well as when I cut open the seed ball. I'm going to show you what it looks like inside. Now you can see here, there's a lot of clay, and you might notice some brown stuff in the middle. There's soil on the inside, as well as there's soil on the outside of the seed ball. And then within that soil, there are seeds that are mixed in, as well as water. And this is what these seed balls comprise of. They're basically packages for seeds that you want to germinate and distribute. And people don't really know where this idea came from of seed balls, but people think that it probably started as a way to germinate and spread seeds in places where the earth was pretty degraded and it was difficult to do so otherwise. Navida is going to talk a bit about why it is that we use these components of soil, clay, and native seeds in order to protect biodiversity.
So I was watching a YouTube video, or a lot of YouTube videos, and in it, a couple of them mentioned how seed balls came from a Chinese gardener who wanted a no-till method to put in his seeds because you really shouldn't disturb the soil while you're planting stuff. So I don't know how accurate that is, but they also mentioned that this is a really good guerrilla gardening method. So if you have a plot of land that you walk by that no one seems to be taking care of and is public property, you can go disperse these seeds. That's what actually our supervisor does, right? Ty has this little patch that she's been trying to repopulate with native seeds. So if Jade, you could hold up the clay or the seed ball, and everyone can see that on the outside, if you guys noticed, it was all this colorful stuff. So Jade actually tried to get all the materials she could for this seed ball project, and as we are in a quarantine, she couldn't do it. Ideally, you would be using clay that is just clay, and that what she used was Play-Doh. That helps give the seed ball a hard coating on the outside so it can anchor itself down into the ground and be protected from the elements. And when there's a lot of rain, the clay just expands and disintegrates, and the seed is able to come out as a little seedling. And another component in it was compost, and Jade's going to talk about that.
Right. So compost is different from soil in a way because compost is mostly purely biotic. It's organic material that has been broken down and degraded to sort of resemble soil. But soil is made up of lots of other things as well. It's made up of both biotic and abiotic materials, including clay and minerals, rocks, things that are not living. The reason why compost is really great to use is because it's made up of so much organic matter that it's made up of lots of nutrients that when are added to the soil layer really help build it and also help retain moisture. So you can see in the soil layers that soil is not just made up of organic matter, but it's made up of lots of other things as well, which makes it different from compost.
So compost is the biotic component of soil, and soil is the makeup of all these tiny little rocks, and the biotic component that the compost provides. And there are multiple different regions in soil, and there is the topmost part, or the top two layers, in which plants are able to survive. And it's different from different region to region, so the tropics won't have the same as the desert would, as I'm sure you're going to expect.
Okay. So, and you're using compost, not only does it provide that benefit of being very nutrient rich, being able to retain moisture in a way that soil alone can't do, but in using compost, you're helping prevent a lot of organic waste from going into landfills and also reducing the amount of fuel that is needed to transport that material to landfills. So in that way, you're protecting biodiversity by diverting that organic matter away from landfills and turning it into something like a seed ball that can actually benefit the soil layer of the community of wherever you live, as well as helping those plants grow as part of that community by giving that nutrient-rich, complex material that's added to the soil.
The point of using compost in the completely inside part of the seed ball is to provide the seed with all of the nutrients and the moisture and all the help it might need. And the clay acts as like a shell to protect it. So the compost is just like a nice little warm hug it's getting as it's trying to grow. You guys were asking about what kinds of seeds should we use, which ones work best together. It really depends on where you're located. And at the end, we actually have a list that the New York State government suggests you use. And what ideas do you have about native plants? What would be a good use for indoor compost? If you guys have a composting bin in the back of your house or inside your house and you're making the nice brown stuff that I can't seem to make, it would be a really good idea to use it. We're going to tell you actually if it's a soil, compost, and seed mixture or if it's layered. We're going to show you two different ways to make it. The way Jade makes it is the layered way, and the way I'm going to show you how to make it is going to be all the mushed up, like a little cake batter sort of way.
Yeah, and then Navida, I don't know if you're able to do so, but you can see there's a list of plants that are native to this region, to New York City. And if you're curious about what types of seeds you may want to use, Navida, I don't know if you can maybe copy and paste that link into the chat.
So you'll just see me doing it. So this is the list that the government suggests we use for this region. And what native plants are? What do you guys define native plants as? Some goldenrods. And there was another helpful link plants that naturally grow in a certain area from this region. So this year I went to this conference. It was really confusing. Well, it confused me further about what a native plant is, because how do you cut off, like, what if it's lived here for 300 years and it no longer does? Is that a native plant? Or plants that don't outcompete others? That's a good one. So I think now Jade will show you guys how to make her layered seed ball. And on the left side, that's the materials that ideally we would be using. And on the right side are the alternatives that you guys can use. So I'll shut off my screen share so we can look at Jade's.
So I noticed that some of you were asking, how is it that the clay that I'm using is, can you see my video? Now you can see my video. How is it that the clay that I'm using is orange? So this is a clay that I was able to find at my local pharmacy, but I would recommend that if you can find something such as non-toxic air dry clay, that is really the best to use. I'm just using this modeling clay for demonstrative purposes to show you the structure of what a seed ball would look like. So what you're going to do is, if you can just gather a walnut-sized ball of clay, and again, if you can find air dry clay, that is really the best to use. You're just gonna flatten it out into a pancake shape. And this clay is less malleable than air dry clay would be. So now that I've made my clay flat like a pancake, what I'm going to be adding next is soil. So ideally, if you can use compost, that would be best. But if you don't have compost at home, or if you don't have access to compost, another alternative is potting soil. And that's what I'm using right now, just normal potting soil. And you're just going to take a pinch of that, and you're just going to add it to the center of your clay pancake. Then once you add it to the center of your clay pancake, you're going to be adding next are your seeds. So I had a pretty hard time finding a packet of native seeds. What I was able to find was this packet of annual seeds, which is mostly non-native seeds, seeds that are not integrated into the ecosystems of this region. But I was able to find as well a packet of both native and non-native seeds. So that is an option if you cannot find a mixture of native seeds. If you can find something that is a mixture of native and non-native, that is okay too. It is helpful to have a mixture of many different types of seeds to increase your chances that these seeds will germinate, as well as using a mixture of different types of seeds that adds to the diversity of what it is that you're germinating. So now that I've got my seeds inside my mixture, I'm going to mix it together. And then you're just going to add a little bit of water. So I just have like a little spray bottle here. You're going to make it moist on the inside. And now you have a good moist mixture of soil and seeds. And you're just going to pinch it. And then reshape it into a ball form. And now you're going to have your seed ball. And why is it that we're making a ball shape? This ball shape will do its best to protect the seeds inside from dehydration. This ball shape is also going to be really great at anchoring your seed ball to the ground so that it is resistant from wind and rain. So this ball shape is the most efficient shape that you can have to protect your seeds. Lastly, you're just going to coat it in an extra layer of soil or compost, whatever you have. And then I'll give it some extra protection against dehydration. So now what is going to happen is, if hopefully you have some air dry clay, you can just leave it to dry for a few days. And then when you're ready, think about where it is that you want native seeds to grow. And you can distribute that seed ball wherever it is that you want those plants to grow. The seed ball, when it's hard, again, will anchor itself to the ground. That hard casing will prevent animals from breaking into it. And eventually, when it has access to water, when it rains or something like that, the seed ball will germinate from the inside because it's moist in there, and it has access to warmth and nutrients from the soil or the compost, whatever you're using. And that germinating seed will start to break this ball open. And when that ball breaks open, there'll be a layer of crumbles left over of clay and compost and soil, and they will become part of the ground. They'll help add to the soil layer, and they will help rebuild that soil layer. And the seeds will germinate and create a community again. And those seeds, because they're native, because they are part of an existing ecosystem, they will attract native plants, they will attract native animals, and help again rebuild that community. So all these materials combined each do their part to help rebuild the biodiversity of your community. However, these materials might be difficult to find right now, so there are lots of other materials you can use as well. And Navida will talk a bit about what she found to use to make this seed ball.
So since we're all in a quarantine and it's highly suggested we stay inside, I figured we might want to have an alternate to the ideal method of making seed balls. So here in front of me, let's see if you can see this. So I have some potting soil, just the normal one from Home Depot that I just happen to have. This is flour, like all-purpose flour, and some marigold seeds. So my seed balls ended up looking like this, and it's not that hard to make. All you're going to do is, these ratios are very suggestive ratios. That's what they are. So it's like 5 parts of soil, and you will get dirty, and 1 part of flour. You just put it into a bowl or something, and then you spray it with some water, and you mix it up. I'm just going to use my hand, and you mix it up until it starts feeling like Play-Doh. And there were some questions about if you could use potting clay. You could probably just check the ingredients. One of the YouTube videos I was watching actually used clay-based kitty litter. So definitely any sort of earth-friendly ingredients are welcome. So you can tell that it's getting a little clumpy right now. It's not perfect yet, so I'm going to continue adding in a bit more water. And if you noticed, I'm also using muffin tins. Feel free to use those too. It's all my kitchen ingredients. So I'm going to take, I guess, a walnut size bunch of soil and make a teeny little indent. And I'm going to take a couple of marigold seeds, just in case, the one that I put in there won't germinate. I think I have 5 in here. and I'm just going to close it up. And since these seeds are long, I'm not going to squish it too much because I don't want to break them. And I'm going to make them kind of round because all of this is really just a suggested method. And there it is. It's ready. And I'm going to just put it here and let it dry. That is your found materials seed bomb how-to. And I'm going to put on a slide for you. Here are a couple of alternatives that we found online to use, but the idea is it'll be some sort of soil, some compost with a seed in it, with a hard covering, or some binding material, which is basically the flour, and some enrichment material, which is the soil.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is a 5-to-1 ratio, and it would be native seeds. But and a mixture of native seeds, right? Ideally, not just one type of native seed, but a mixture of native seeds. That way, you're creating opportunities for more diversity. But if you can't find those things because it is very difficult to find these things right now, there are lots of other alternatives you can use. Navida used flour and water. If you can't find compost, you can use potting soil. If you have vermicompost at home, you've made compost using worms, that's another great option. You can use that. It's just you have to make sure to mix it with potting soil. Otherwise, it'll become rock hard, and your seeds are going to have a really hard time germinating within that.
Rachel's question about how many seeds you need to add into the seed balls, I would add in 2 to 5, and the 5-to-1 ratio is actually the soil to flour. That was the most popularly suggested ratio on the internet.
There are lots of other alternatives for clay as well. There's wet clay, then there's also dry clay. There are clays that are designed for you to use on your face, such as like the Aztec healing clay, if you've ever seen that at the pharmacy. You can also use that as clay for your seed balls as well, and that might be easier to find than like pottery clay or something like that. So you can use dry clay, you can use wet clay.
The seed balls that I made,
you mentioned kitty litter.
Yeah, so one of the YouTube videos was using kitty litter, and I had to come in from the other room I was in. I was like, wait, are you serious? Turns out you can, because some kitty litters are literally just clay because it clumps. Duh, that makes sense. So a question about where to use your seed balls. I'm just going to take mine and throw them in my front yard. But I guess anywhere is a good spot. And you could maybe even put your crop seeds into it because the Asian guy who came up with this method used it for crops.
Yeah. So people don't just use seed balls necessarily for native plants, but people have used seed balls in the past for any type of gardening, vegetable gardening, herb gardening. If you have produce at home that has seeds inside, you could also help start them at home in a seed ball as well. Literally anything that you would want to grow from seed, you can make a seed ball out of it, and that will help it. That'll give it a good environment to start in. It will help it germinate.
I forgot to introduce my birds to you guys. I'm sure you've been hearing them. I apologize. They're very opinionated and passionate about seeds.
Just to clarify, all the materials that I got at a pharmacy. However, you might have better luck buying seeds at like the grocery store. I know like really nice grocery stores like Whole Foods have seed collections. You could also try a hardware store. I know Home Depot carries native plant seed packets if you can get to Home Depot.
I know I've
So if you're
Amazoned
ever
a bunch of
curious.
them a lot of times. They just have like really big seed packs of wildflowers for the Northeast region. It's very specific, but very awesome. So some questions were, where are you legally not allowed to drop seed balls? I would just say if they're gonna get angry at you, don't drop it there.
Yeah, sometimes using seed balls has been referred to as guerrilla gardening because it is something that people would do when Earth Day started in the 70s to grow plants where they normally wouldn't have been able to. So you could throw these into an empty lot. You could throw these into a tree pit. You could throw these anywhere you want plants to grow. And that's what's really great about it. You can throw these anywhere you want those plants to grow.
Another question, do you just place the seed balls when it's raining or avoid throwing during a drought? These are more like a set and forget sort of deals. You can just throw them, and because of the clay and compost, it's good to go. Is there places where throwing these balls are dangerous for the local flora? So since they are supposed to be native seed balls, I'm going to say no, because this should be the local flora, and you're just helping fluff it up. How long does it take to see results?
That's a really good question. So I've actually seen examples where these seed balls, you will see plants germinating from them within a few days. So it's actually quite fast because these seed balls create such an amazing environment for seeds to germinate. It's moist, it's warm, it's protected from dehydration, and there's lots of soil nutrients again coming from whatever you have inside of it, soil or compost. So because it has everything it needs to grow, the seeds will actually start germinating and sprout from your seed ball very quickly a lot of the time. But again, it depends on the type of seed that you're using. Some seeds germinate at a different pace than others.
I think also it's good to keep in mind if you make the seed ball that Jade showed you, it's a little bit more protected than the seed ball I showed you guys, because this is only good for, I would say, like a pretty nice day before raining. But there's nothing to protect the seed inside of this besides the soil, which is going to disintegrate really quickly. And you are welcome to throw it or place it down. And if you are making a seed ball like Jade's, you can just throw it in any sort of weather conditions.
So Navida and Jade, thank you so much. This has been really fun and really informative. We have a few people calling in on the phone. Do you mind if I unmute them and let them ask a couple questions too?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so folks on the phone, I am unmuting you. If you would like to ask a question, please introduce yourself and ask away. Someone asked if the recording will be available. Yes, it will. If you registered on Eventbrite, then we have your email address and we will email the recording out to you. Tomorrow, not today. The video recordings take a while to compile. All right, last call for anyone on the phone. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. We can hear you. Okay, I am muting you again.
Another question, I think it's a little important for you guys to have an answer, is there a time of year that is better to do this? I would say the growing season, right? So then you get to see the fruits of your labor the quickest.
Just to clarify, the recording will be sent to everyone who registered on Eventbrite, because those are the only ones we have email addresses for. So if you're tuning in but didn't register on Eventbrite, you can email me. I'll put my email address in the chat and I will send it to you directly.
I also just want to note that I've made seed balls with pretty much every age group from 5-year-olds to adults. And it seems like something that most people enjoy doing just because it's very practical. It's something you can do with your hands. And it's also, I think, cool to think about what it will look like once you've thrown it out there and are growing it. So I would suggest if you have like a child at home and you're looking for something to do with them, this would be a really great activity. And, you know, instead of just making one, you can make multiples with different types of seeds as well.
All right, well, thank you. If there are no further questions, then I think we'll end early. What do you guys think, Jade and Navida? How are you feeling?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Happy Earth Day. Our last webinar before the keynote speakers is going to be at 4:30 with Eric Rodriguez from the Highline teaching us about building local community seed libraries. It's going to be really good. So please register on Eventbrite if you want us to email you the link. And then at 6 p.m. we'll have our keynote addresses from the one and only Toshi Reagan and farmer and activist Leah Penniman from Soulfire Farm, and that will be on Facebook Live. There's no need to register. You can just go to GreenThumb's Facebook page and it will be there. You don't even need a Facebook account. And thank you everyone again, and happy Earth Day.
Okay, thank
you,
you.
Jade and
Happy
Navida.
Earth Day.
Thanks, Mom.
If you want to turn on your camera and unmute